Hello, I think I am on. Let me see where I can check the chat. There we go. Okay, there. Okay, just checking things. I did not give, I should say I was supposed to give myself enough time to do all of this testing, but almost like it was intentional. My kiddo woke up 3 or 4 times last night, even though they are 5 years old, and that should not have happened, and that hasn't happened in literal years. So I literally he just got picked up by his dad. So, that's one thing I should put. Like when I talk about things that work for me, part of it is like everyone's situation is going to be a little bit different. I am a solo parent. However, my co-parent, we split it pretty well, 50-50. So there are times where I can just focus on work. And, I'll talk a little bit about that more. But, there's also times where, like, my kid is with me and I just kind of know, like, I'm probably not going to get, like, anything done. Like, my neurodivergence kind of means that, like, even if my kiddo is in a completely different room, my brain cannot focus because I'm thinking about like what is he doing and is he getting into something and it's too quiet in there, like the typical parent thing. So sometimes that is an issue. So I'm lucky in some ways to have more separation than other people get in that way. So I do want to just kind of have a disclaimer that way because I I know that even when I had a really young baby, I'm like, a lot of these things that people are saying, like, I cannot do when my kid wakes up every 90 minutes to 2 hours trying to eat. So I just kind of wanted to put that in the very beginning. But this is more about what works for me as somebody who has a chronic illness that can come and go. And how that impacts what I'm able to do, how I'm able to show up, how I'm able to market. Um, Obviously this is more of a marketing channel, or that's kind of the space that I'm in, but like I think this can benefit anybody who has um, like a service provider type of role where they're doing some client work, or they have to create as a part of their job, like if you're a content creator. And of course, the dog wants to sit right on top of me. Live streams, everybody. um, but I'm not seeing anything in the chat yet. I don't think. Read only SS. That's fine. Let me at least look and see if I'm getting anything in the chat. Um, in fact, that's what I'm going to use my phone for. Let me look. I was going to use my phone as another camera so you can kind of see the paper, like the paper stuff versus um, the digital, because I am going to share my screen a little bit later if it will be helpful to folks. But right now I'm going to watch the YouTube chat on my phone. Okay. Let me make sure that is muted. You don't want an echo. Okay. Huh. But yeah, so I think that for anyone who there's also like people who have like they do the strategy and or the implementation, the people who maybe do speaking events, because I've done that quite a bit, or facilitating, or working with large organizations like that. But all of those things I think have some sort of you could be benefit from this. Let me get a drink. And I think part of it is like I've talked about this in the YouTube video over on Wednesday. Um, there are like seasons and dips and valleys in energy levels, and I think that when you are chronically ill, when you do have something that's disabling, you are hyper aware of those things. But I think that's also true for everybody. Like you cannot keep up like 100% productivity every single day, week in, week out, month in, month out. It is um, not something that is sustainable for literally anybody, but for people who have disability like myself, um, our bodies kind of like take that very literally and do not give you a choice in the matter. Like, for example, like last year when I had my pretty severe flare, that was very scary for me. If you want to know more about that, like I said, I recorded that's part of the video on YouTube. Uh, but like that is something that do I have it out? I read Slow Productivity by Cal Newport, and that kind of validated um, that thought process that is something that we all deal with. But the problem is right, like things like client deadlines are still there. If you are, and the bills don't stop. Like, oh, you're tired, you have a flare. Okay, we'll pause your bills. Said literally nobody ever. Like that's just not the case. So it's like this balance of how can I honor where my energy levels and my capacity is at, while also, like letting everything continue to keep going in some way. And there's like, I think several ways to go about that. And like I said, this is more about me talking about what works for me so that you can help decide what will work for you and then like leave the rest. Like this is not the gospel truth in any way, shape, or form. But I think that some people choose to have a team, right? Like if you're a solopreneur, like sometimes the ultimate goal is to have somebody take some of the more exhausting things off of your plate, or somebody that will check and answer emails, or like do like project management, like whatever is tiresome for you, or like it's something that needs to keep going behind the scenes so you can get back to doing the stuff that you really enjoy. That is a part of it. What I don't currently have that right now, but that is definitely a method. And when we all should be taking vacations or time off, but when you are solo, like it's really hard, if not impossible, to do that because everything stops if you're not physically attending to it. So there is something to be said for that. When it comes to creating content, everybody has kind of established that batching your content is the way to go, so that when you do have those high energy periods, that stuff can continue to go out. I think that that's something I work with clients, of like, what is the foundational things that you can start to put together, things that you've maybe already done via speaking, via workshops. Maybe you have pieces of your paid work that can stand alone, you can pull into your content. That's something that I have been doing. One of my videos, and not this week, but last week, was a video from like the course I was developing. And I did not really change anything about it. I just pulled out that piece because I felt like it's something that could stand alone, even though it did have, related to other parts of it. So there's that aspect of it, of like, what is things that like could stand alone and could work for you, when you don't have that energy. I think part of it is you do need a significant energy investment to, like, for me, in fact, I don't know if maybe I can share my screen. Like it was like a project in and of itself, just to pull together all those things that I had done and organize them on Google Drive. That was a big thing that helped me, was getting a bird's eye view of all of the content that I had already created. And to be honest, I have it spread between 2 Google Drive accounts, which is not amazing. I'm trying to move it into the one that has more storage, because my Google Workspace account only came with 30 gigs, which is literally insane. 30 gigs goes really fast. Like when your average video is 2 or 3 gigs long or 2 or 3 gigs big. Like it goes fast. Um, so let me see how it will let me share my screen. Before I share my screen, I'm actually gonna get into the screen I need. Okay. We're gonna go into Google Drive for a second, just for this part of it. So, because you have every client I've ever worked with, you have more that you have probably already created in some way than you know. And even if you don't have it completely created, one thing that I do is AI note takers are pretty commonplace in meetings now. And I would never like breach confidentiality with clients, but there's often times where they will ask questions that are for their situation, but also it's very general purpose of like, oh, wow, that is something that other people are almost certainly asking. It feels timely. So I will either come back to it in the transcripts, or sometimes even like after I like end the call, I will just grab my phone and record really quickly the answer that I gave to that question. Maybe just again more general purpose. Again, not revealing anything specific to the people that I work with. But like that is timely, you know. And honestly, like I said, it's already fresh in your mind. It doesn't necessarily take more energy to do. And it kind of takes the pressure off of you coming up with what should I talk about it all of the time, because a lot of the time what the work that you're doing, you know, behind the scenes is content worthy, you know, whether you realize it. So I'm going into the Google Drive right now, and I actually have a like a templated version in Google Drive for folks. So let me know if you want that, even though you really can't duplicate Google Drive folders for some reason, which I find bizarre, but that's its own deal. Let me go ahead and share the screen. And hopefully this won't mess up. Can you see it? Okay. So this is the content asset library. All of my email sequences, opt-ins that I've created throughout the years. So VOC research, that's voice of customer. And if you're not aware of what that is, I'll probably eventually do a live stream where I actually no, I will a couple of weeks from now, I think beginning of August. It's on my schedule to do something about this. But it's understanding how the people in your industry, you know, your customers, your ideal clients, how they're talking about their current challenges, the symptoms that they're having, what they are wanting, like their outcomes, their results, and things like that. I won't go too much into this. Some of these are private groups, but I would like when people are asking about things, I screenshot it, and that is either content that I plan on creating, or I compiled it all actually in like a Google Sheet to make it easier to look through when I'm writing copy, when I'm writing landing pages, when I'm thinking of emails and newsletters to send and things like that. So it's like sometimes it's, you know, again, it's easy enough to just screenshot like, hey, like for example, I'm in marketing. So people are like, I'm having a hard time getting my podcast seen by other people. What do you suggest? Like, you know, like you can answer in that group. In fact, you should, but why let that go to waste? Screenshot that and use that, or like copy paste that like into, you know, your Google Drive, and that can be content. You know, it's all about just kind of having that mindset of when you have the capacity to answer that question, like again on Facebook group, you don't always do, like if, especially like for me, sometimes I'm there in there just lurking, but like if you are participating, like again, if it's general and it's not specific to somebody's situation, like that example I just gave, a lot of people can relate to that. You don't have to out that person that asked that question, and that can now be content. And I think that sometimes like that seems simple and it seems obvious, but do we do it? Not typically, not always. Um, like your own testimonials, like having everything in one place also just helps my brain. So the thing that I have struggled with for years is, let's see if I, let me see if I can go back to, yeah. Can you see this? So I have, it's like a weekly planner. It's from Erin Condren. Um, I would every week would like brain dump certain like tasks. And what's nice about this is how I kind of started, is externalizing the ideas in your head. Like helps, I think, with the energies levels, because it takes more than you think to try to remember everything. And this is especially true for ADHD, people who are neurodivergent, like memory problems are somewhat common. Um, so like externalizing weekly, brain dumping weekly. I did it on paper. I now do it digitally as either as well or as a replacement. But what I liked about this part of it, or doing it this way, is how thin these columns are. Force me to be more realistic about what I can accomplish in one day. Like I could literally fit 3 or 4 things on this. So even though I didn't always do it like, oh, these are the things I do on Monday, these are the things, like I only could do 3 things per day on this brain dump. So it like, even though it let me externalize it, it also let me kind of realize like, you cannot do as much as you think you can do in your head. Like it needs to live somewhere. And like I said, I've started to do that on Asana, but but it's not everything all the time. It's what out of that brain dump list is time sensitive, and then just highlighting those things, or what are the things that maybe somebody else is waiting on me for, like a proposal, like an email, like I'm doing a podcast, I need to send over my bio and my picture or something. Like what are things that like because it's hard for me to get motivated sometimes for things that are like my personal projects, like recording a course. But it's much easier for me. I don't know if it's a people pleaser thing, but if there's other people involved, I'm much more likely to be able to be like, okay, this has to be done by Tuesday, by Wednesday. Especially when I tell somebody, hey, I'll have that to you on a certain day. Like I do that not just for them, but for me, because if I say that to you, that means I kind of have to at least try to. Now, granted, there's some grace that needs to happen, right? Like if, like knock on wood, my kid gets sick or something over the weekend, or I, have something happen, like being able to communicate that to them is important. But like when the problem with being neurodivergent, the problem sometimes with, even with me being chronically ill, everything feels important. Everything does. And so if everything feels important, then nothing does. It's really hard. The other piece that I think was the key for me to start really making progress this last quarter was learning how to prioritize. And learning what was, learning how to prioritize, not just, again, the things that other people are waiting on me for, but I don't know if that was the right way to say that. Okay. I am a good writer, I promise. But yeah, like learning how to prioritize, and also like finding that balance between the adaptability and the flexibility, as I've talked about either in Reels or in my previous video. Let me see if it will. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, here's the client transcripts. Let me see if it'll jump over to. So the aspect that has helped me to prioritize was a tool called Sunsama. I don't currently use it right now. I kind of do what Sunsama was doing, but like in my Asana board. You guys can see this, right? Why does it say it's not? I'm trying to see if it'll let me. Come on. So it's showing me that it's sharing my screen. That's why I was using Restream to begin with, so that I could share my screen with you all. I am trying very hard to get this to work. Sorry. But while that's happening, I will. So I showed this. Another aspect is tracking my time, which is something that my friend Jen Roberts of Time Honored Coaching had encouraged me to do. But what's important about doing that? Oh, that's why. I see. When let it. Okay. I'm figuring out how to share my screen. This, or yeah. Anyway, but tracking my time. Some people will do it for a week or two, but I think it's important. This is why when I created my marketing planner, which I will try to show at the end if you'd like to see, because I created a planner that like works for my brain, and that helped me be more consistent. Because if I like, I might have to try it on paper before I do it on digitally. At least that was how it felt at the time. Because I can bring my planner with me more places than my computer. But tracking my time, that's like I said, that's an inherent part of the daily planner pages, because when you are chronically ill, you often, like, you can have a good week. You can have a good couple of weeks. You can even have a good month. But it's inevitable, especially, if you are solo and self-employed, where you're going to hit a wall. You're either going to get fatigued, you're going to have, something like triggering, like a flare. You will get like just physically sick because your immune system isn't amazing. You'll have a heavy appointment week. All of those different like variables. Some of them we can control, some of them we can't. But without that awareness, and I'm not even talking just about flares, although that's important. I think it was important for me to see what triggered those flares. And I can tell you, it's July right now, and summer and the heat is my number one trigger. So that's something that I've had to understand about myself, and like, how do I basically prevent myself from going outside as much as possible, even though I sometimes want to. But understanding, getting, like, I talked about that bell curve of like, here's where your average productivity is. Here's the hyper focus when you're hitting on all cylinders, and here's maybe when you're flare and you're just kind of just doing the barest minimum you can. It was important to get like as much data as possible on what I could reasonably expect to accomplish, because so much of the hustle messaging that is out there is, trying to be like, oh, fit as much in as you can, work till 7, 8, 9 p.m. And I have realized, like, I can work late, like a day or two. But if I do that like a week in a row, for example, I'm I'm basically borrowing against my future self. That is what it's like to be chronically ill and be and have a disability. Is you can do that, you can do that hustle, but you are literally like you're not getting anything extra. So it's not really worth it, because again, that just means, like, for example, let's say I did that like I did that last week. Monday I almost got nothing done because I just was not, I was feeling very sick, and I was feeling like heat exhaustion and everything, and I like slept in, and like I said, I couldn't even tell you what I did on Monday. So again, what was the point? Okay, I worked late and I don't really have that much to show for it. So it took me a full day to get back on track. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I've been able to get, my, again, my middle ground of getting stuff done. But, it's just, it was data that showed me point blank, like, hustling does not work for me. Hustling probably does not work for you, because there's some, if there's at some point, your body is going to need and force you to pause. So finding that push and that pull of, like, I think I can do, okay, I'm feeling myself getting fatigued. I'm going to make sure I like close it up early on Friday this week or something, like finding a way to, like, or I haven't really been doing enough self-care. So for me, like doing personal doodling, drawing, art projects, that's a way that fills my cup. So like knowing that about myself, it took tracking the time, it took being really realistic, it took um also looking of like of if I can only get one thing done today, and sometimes that's all I can do, sometimes that is even a stretch, but if I can only do one thing today, what would that be? you know and finding using my planner to kind of see the personal obligations, right? Like it's summertime, like my lawn needs to be mowed. I mowed my front lawn this week, knowing that I had to be really careful. Like I started that at like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, knowing that if I didn't get it done before like 9 a.m., my pots meant that I probably would not be able to do it. So like I had to do it before it got hot, knowing that was a major trigger for me. Making sure that I was hydrated, things like that. So I know that self-care has become this commodity at this point, but for people who are disabled, people who are chronically ill, it's not about like, oh, a bubble bath, oh, let me read an affirmation to myself, da 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 da. It's like making sure your basic needs are met, making sure that lack of eating is another trigger for my POTS. And so I've reached out to my community and be like, hey, how do you ensure that you are eating at regular intervals? Because I struggle with that. Neurodivergence can cause time blindness. And the summer kind of compounds that, because, if it's bright out at 9 p.m., my brain has not connected, oh, it's time to eat dinner. Like there's times where I would not eat until 8 or 9 p.m. because the summer just affects my sense of how long time has passed. So again, just having that awareness, that body awareness, was the first step. And it doesn't seem like it even has anything to do with your business, right? But it does, right? Because if that happens, then I'm taking myself out of being able to even be at my middle ground of productivity, much less any hope of being able to hyper focus or anything like that. I think let's go back to try to or go back to share screen. Let's see if it will work. It should now. We'll see. Can you see it? Another thing that I realize that helps me be more productive, we'll see if it'll let me share the screen. I'm waiting. I'm looking at my phone to see if it's popping up. This might be part of my neurodivergence more than anything, but um, I really need a lot of visual stimuli to make it feel to give me a sense of progress. Like I need some sort of way to track visual progress. What I like about Asana, if anyone's ever used it before, go ahead and just see this. If you check off, how there's like, oh, I did this task, I did this task. You do like, I don't know if it's every 3 or every 5 times you do that, like a like unicorn or a narwhal, like rainbow, like flies across your screen, and that gives me enough enough dopamine to feel really good about myself. But I don't know why. I'm gonna go ahead and look at Chrome and see if I can make myself log on here. Yeah, let's see. So, and there's something to be said about the whole having the dopamine hit. There is research that says that people who have ADHD, like myself, are chronically like low in dopamine, which is kind of why we are prone to scrolling on social media, because that's kind of an easy way to get dopamine. We do have like a tendency to do those things, and it's also why it's hard for us to be motivated because of that chronically low dopamine. So if that is something that you struggle with, you kind of have to find your own ways to inject that into the work, especially with longer term projects. So delayed gratification is another thing that neurodivergent people can struggle with because of that. Like for example, finishing, like if you're a writer and you struggle to finish book length projects, that is probably a factor. And I only say this not to pathologize, but to kind of take some of the shame out of it. Like it's not, there's some things that are biologically at play that you shouldn't be beating yourself up about. You just have to find a way to use that knowledge, use that awareness of both what's going on with you, your own body, your own brain, and okay, knowing that about me, how can I work with that to create a structure that supports that mitigates some of the negative effects, that ensures that like I'm not triggering a flare up, or I'm not doing things that will stretch me further than I can. Um, okay, I'm logging in, everybody, into Asana on Chrome. So I'm using the streaming software on Chrome because sometimes it has a problem on Safari. Okay, let's see if this will work. Okay, come on, come on. Will it do it? Are we there? Okay, can you see anything? It says sharing this tab. Is it sharing the tab? At some point, maybe I'll just screen record and I'll do a separate video about this at some point. Okay, there it is. You're seeing it. Yay. Okay. So the CEO date is a concept that, like a weekly CEO date, is something that I got from Rachel Cook, of the founder of the CEO Collective. when I was in her mastermind prior to the CEO Collective, the Sweet Spot Strategy. But I took that idea and I took some of that and I kind of did some of my own stuff with it. Like I reframed into my customer journey and some of that stuff. But this is going to be a little bit woo-woo-y. Like intention for the week. Again, I think for me, just being proactive and being intentional, I kind of want to be like, if I could, I do this quarterly too. I might show quarterly planning another day, but like, what's the theme for the week? You know, how can I sum it up? And that to me keeps me focused and it helps me to prioritize what is leading into that intention, what is feeding into that theme that I'm setting for myself. And it's not always business related, although, you know, it often is. So weekly habit, as you can see, I have pictures. Again, I need some sort of visual stimulation going on. So you see the coffee, you see the desk. Yeah. It's like, it helps me. Like I have one for the sales one, like my scorecard has plants on it, you know, so it helps break it up because otherwise it can look really boring. And like I said, my brain doesn't know what to look at. So here are the weekly habits. So again, that's usually some sort of self-care habit. It could be making sure I drink such and such amount of water, then I put my phone down at like a certain time of night so I'm not scrolling. And you see the green checks and the X's. Will it get bigger? Is there a way to get it bigger? Can you see? Yeah, you can see it. Okay. So yeah, so if I did it on Monday, I'll get a green check. You know, it's kind of like, it's similar to what you would see as like a habit tracker in like a paper planner. I basically took what I did in my paper planner and translated it into Asana. So here, notable appointments. Again, as somebody who has neurodivergence, I have a tendency to either like think something is at 10:30 when it's really at 11:30 or vice versa. So I like, it makes me check my calendar every week to ensure I'm not missing out on anything important. There's been times where I've missed, not missed, but I have wrongly gauged like medical appointments for my son. So I'm like, I really have to make sure that I'm doing this. So marketing and sales plan. This is why I did the 2 weeks ago or a week and a couple of days ago that external customer touch points video, because this is how I think of like what's going to be my awareness building task for the week. You know, what's my engagement task for the week, and then how am I like conversion? How am I asking for the sale? So I keep that front and center. Customer experience and client work tasks. That's kind of self-explanatory. So I will say that client work, of course, if there's tasks or deliverables that need to be due, I make sure that I have that written down. Customer experience can be things that are more general of like processes that I want to repeat. That's another thing that really helped me is using like Asana and Google Drive and all of those different digital tools to create templates and checklists. Because then again, it's externalizing the things I know I need to do, like for clients or for my marketing or whatever, that are now, I see it in front of me. I know that I'm not missing any steps. I know that I'm keeping it the same and standardizing it. Because the more you're able to repeat something, the faster you will be at it. And like the more efficient and less brain power it takes. So that is something that has helped me is externalizing some of these systems and processes in my marketing, in my sales, in my client work to make sure that people are also getting the best from me. You know, that they're getting that standard across the board. So business building project, that kind of comes from Jessica Lackey's Deeper Business Community. You know, she talks about kind of she has a really good methodology around this, around planting seeds, tending sprouts, like deepening your roots. And so business building projects are like deepening the roots, like the foundations of your business. So this is kind of like going along with what I'm saying about making some of that stuff repeatable, of either, reaching out to your network, things like that. So that's kind of the general CEO date, but I check my metrics every week, and I will go here to the deciding on the 3 priorities. Like I said, prioritization was and is always been the struggle. So what I first do, like I said, I said this about, like, I do it on paper sometimes because it's easier, and sometimes I do it here in the Asana task. It's like weekly brain dump of all my tasks, and it says highlight or bold the priorities, which ones are time sensitive. And then from that, so it'll be like this long thing down here, and I do it bullet point style usually, just to kind of see which ones are separate tasks or projects and prioritize that. And then from there, I'll show you once we get out of that. Then I have separate boards. Let's see if you can see them. I have ones for different offers. I have ones for different clients. I have like my editorial calendar, which is my content, sales pipeline. But I probably am in this weekly planning one the most, because as you can see, I have the templates for the planning, and I have it by day. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Oh, I can hit okay on that. I did that. Let's see if it'll do it. Will it do it? No, it didn't do it. Oh well. Sorry, the dog is freaking out for some reason, even though he was literally just outside before we got on. But yeah, so I do it from Monday to Saturday. I don't have anything on Sunday. I have my completed tasks in case I have to dig them back out. And archive are things that like maybe are not right yet. Like this one's from Q2, so that's why like I want to keep it if I need it. But maybe this is like, oh, I can wait on that. So it's kind of like the idea parking lot area, and I can bring it forward. What I like about doing it this way versus on my paper planner, at least for right now, is because, excuse me, like I can drag things. Like let's say like I told you Monday was a day I wasn't able to do much just because of my health. I can drag things back and forth. And it also helps me see if have I overloaded a day. I can look at it like in it, and I can see it all in like a weekly overview. And like calendar can help with that too. But like this is a little bit easier because inside of it, I will know. Let's see one. Let's the Q3 weeklies. Inside of it, I will know if there's subtasks and things as well. Like I try to also do that as well. So that it's not one big, that's another thing that I used to do all the time. And I really struggled with it was, I would put a task down that was not a task. It was a big ass project, and I had not broken it up into smaller tasks. So the task initiation was very difficult because it's like, yeah, I kind of knew where to start, but I didn't know all of the tasks that went into that project. And I had not really done that for myself. So that was another piece of it, is breaking things up into even smaller pieces. Like, let's see, I'll go ahead to this one. So the narrative growth audit, you'll see it pop up, is my intro offer. So some of this stuff is stuff that I pulled from pulling from my sales pages, or pulling from my emails, or pulling from things I've already created, so that I can use that in the social. So instead of trying to write everything from scratch, here's stuff that I can use to reference. Let's see. Yeah. And here you go. Here's like the subtasks involved in promoting that offer on social media. Recording B-roll. And if you see the, it's kind of small, but there's subtasks in that. Those are the specific B-roll I should be recording for my reels. Specific types of reels. designing carousel, write captions, design stories, schedule the content. Like it goes all the way into each specific task, so that I'm not spending. I spent so much brain power. I would say sometimes 2 to 3 hours in a day, in an 8 hour day, just figuring out what I needed to do, what to get started on. So it was really no wonder that I was feeling always behind, which by the way, sometimes doesn't go away, unfortunately. Um, but I also like I kind of was behind because I was spending like half of my time just figuring out what to get done. So it was really clarifying to really start to, and I know project management systems are not like this revolutionary thing, but like finding a way that allows that flexibility. If you notice, there's not really any deadlines on any of these things. Oh, the scorecard is has a due date of today because every Friday I want to check in with, like, did I make progress on the bigger goals that I have? But for the most part, the I let it be fluid. Like I said, if there's things that are client related, I will definitely put a deadline on. Or if, like, let's say I'm doing like like these Friday live streams, I need to get those out, get like social media out about that ahead of time. So those are going to have an inherent deadline to it. But for other things, I have the way I'd like to do it, but I also know that I'm going to have to swap things around. Like the reel I was going to record on Tuesday, I didn't end up being able to do that. So I did something else, and I kept that momentum going, but I like, let me record from bed. Let me be like, how can I strip this down and simplify it in a way where I'm not putting too much pressure on myself? And that was really a very key piece of that. All right. So I've been at it for about an hour now. I'm trying to see if there's any questions that people have. When it comes to like when you're actively in a flare, and even pulling this up feels like a challenge. For one, this is my homepage. So I use Safari, I don't use Chrome, but when I like open a new tab, this comes up automatically. Again, taking some of the brain power away from trying to see what I need to do, or like oh, I forgot what I had to do. That comes up automatically. That's something I learned from Ashley Tyndall of system integrators, solution integrators. Sorry, I forgot her name of her business for a quick second. So I learned that from her as well. So it's just, again, it's finding the pieces that from each individual person that will work for you. And maybe it's paper for right now. Like I said, maybe maybe something more physical is what's going to help you implement, at least for right now. That's okay. That's fine. It's whatever is helping you move forward. It was really only when I like kind of feel like I kept writing the same task over and over again, because there were certain things like I would put on there that I just didn't get time to do. And that made me feel a certain way. That made me feel like guilt around, like, oh, I've put, like, on my paper planner, I put this specific task. Now, granted, it wouldn't be a super high priority task, but it was a task I'd put on over and over again. So at least with like using a digital tool, I only write it down once, and I may move that, go somewhere. You can chill out for just a second. Okay. Everyone say hi to Pizza. Pizza, you're starring in a live stream today. Um, but yeah, so that was kind of my thought process, is instead of doing that and like making me like kind of have a guilt thing about it, because I think that's another piece. Is the guilt will also stop you in a lot of ways, or it won't necessarily cause a flare up per se, but when you're in that, like, I didn't do enough frame of mind, you're not as creative, you're not doing what you could be doing, you're not at your best, and it becomes harder because, oh, I'm not doing enough often translates to, let me work a couple more hours and get this task marked off my list. Let me check my emails at such and such amount of time during the day. Like, let me, like you start to push yourself because that guilt makes you feel like you're not doing enough. So, whatever you can do to kind of like challenge that belief. And that's why I think the tracking of your time helps with that, because, I like to think that I have some, I'm a logical person at times. So when I see the data in front of me of like, oh, working late has the opposite effect and it's actually not helping me like I think it is, it helps me challenge that guilt cycle in my brain, and that beating myself up about the productivity or lack thereof. It's like it is clearly in front of me that this is like harming more than it is helping. And when I do take time away, either to do a project that I like that's personal, or spending time with like friends and family, or doing going and taking a walk outside, like I can show that that does improve my mood, my energy, and therefore I'm going to just show up better for myself and for my relationships and in my work. So like I was able to challenge that through that journaling and that planning and that just time tracking, and just like developing that habit of body awareness, of checking in with myself on a daily basis of like where I am at, both professionally and in my health and stuff. So I hope that was helpful. Like I said, we're closing in on the hour. Feel free, like if you see this in the replays, feel free to comment and let me know if there's things that you have questions on, or you have your own things you'd like to share about what helps you. Like I said, this is all very personalized, so I think that would still help other people. And if you kind of want that mix of support and accountability, and like celebrating your wins even when they feel small, even when you're like maybe not feeling amazing, I do have a Discord server that is free. It is the Story Spark Lounge, and I can put that either in the comments on YouTube, or I will like put in the video description or something. So, all right, I thank you for being patient with all of the crazy tech stuff. This was maybe not the best one to start off with my brand new live stream series, but it was very topical to what I'd been talking about, so I wanted to capture that. So, all right.